Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, helping families love their homes again. Inspiration at callmosby.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jason Rosenbaum. Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe didn't just call lawmakers back to Jefferson City to redraw the state's congressional lines. He's also urging lawmakers to make monumental changes to Missouri's initiative petition system. And while that might seem like hyperbolic adjectives, it's not that far from the truth. Under the current system, groups who gather enough signatures to get a proposed constitutional amendment on the ballot need a simple statewide majority for passage. But Kehoe's proposal would drastically raise the bar for some proposed constitutional amendments and some statutory ballot items to be enacted. Not only would a measure need a statewide vote, but it would also have to pass in all 8 congressional districts. As it stands, this would not apply to proposed constitutional amendments or proposed statutory ballot items that originate from the legislature. Democratic Senate Minority Leader Doug Beck of Afton said earlier this week that the proposal, which will need voter approval in 2026, would decimate the ballot initiative process.
That is impossible. That would never happen. Nobody would ever set out to do that. That won't happen. So it would take your voice away completely. You know, they're trying to tell you they're keeping you out of state interest, blah, blah, blah. They're taking away your voice completely because they don't like your ideas. But they keep getting elected. They don't like your ideas. And what are your ideas doing? You're always trying to help somebody.
Still, the idea received strong support from Missouri Secretary of State Denny Hoskins, who pushed for restrictions on the initiative petition process when he was a member of the Missouri Senate. I spoke with Hoskins on Wednesday about why he feels this plan that Kehoe is supporting will fare well at the ballot box. Here's my conversation with Secretary of State Denny Hoskins. Secretary Hoskins, welcome to the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air.
Thanks for having me.
Why do you support this initiative petition overhaul proposal that Governor Kehoe unveiled last week, and why do you think it will find favor with Missouri voters?
Well, I've always said when I was a state representative or state senator, it needs to be a little bit harder to put something in the Missouri Constitution. We have bingo in the Missouri Constitution, and right now, in my opinion, we have a lot of out-of-state special interest groups that come in and spend millions and millions of dollars to put something on the ballot that really sound good on a 30-second radio ad or 30-second TV spot, but in my opinion, don't reflect the true value of Missourians.
Republicans have sought to make it harder to approve constitutional amendments for well over a decade. The first iteration of this idea was raising the percentage threshold from a simple majority to anywhere from 57% to 60%. Then they backed what was known as the concurrent majority plan that required an amendment to pass with a simple majority and in 5 out of 8 congressional districts. This proposal requires a simple majority and passage in all congressional districts. Why have these proposals escalated so drastically in terms of their restrictiveness?
Well, I think the Missouri Constitution is almost a sacred document, and it's not something that just should be changed willy-nilly based on the political whims, especially of outside special interest groups. And so I do think that it needs to be harder to put something in the Missouri Constitution. And whether it's concurrent majority, whether it's a majority of all 8 congressional districts plus statewide, whether it's a higher percentage, there's lots of ideas that have been floated out there. You know, as a state senator, obviously I had my own opinion of what that should be, but as the chief elected official now in the state of Missouri, as Secretary of State, I just think that something needs to be passed. And I have confidence in our legislature that they will be able to pass something in accordance with Governor Kehoe's special session call.
From your understanding, because I don't have the details of the proposal in front of me, but would constitutional amendments that originate from the legislature also need to pass in 8 out of 8 congressional districts, or would it still be a simple majority?
I think that the legislature would require that as well. Now, I know special session starts on Wednesday, and I've not seen the bills yet, but my understanding is that any of those, whether it's proposed by the legislature to be a constitutional amendment or whether it's proposed through the initial petition process, would require both have the same requirements.
So you would be supportive of the requirements being the same, whether it be for the legislature or the initiative petition process?
Yes, I would be supportive of them both being the same.
So here is the danger for that. Let's just say that voters approve this idea, but they do not approve a measure to repeal what's known as Amendment 3, which enshrined abortion rights protections in the Constitution in 2024. If it requires 8 out of 8 congressional districts to pass a constitutional amendment, in that scenario, have Missouri Republicans accidentally legalized abortion basically forever?
I don't think so. And again, I guess I'll preface by I'm not an attorney. So if the legislature does pass this initiative petition process, it will have to go to the voters. And the voters should be on that ballot in the year of 2026. And so I know that there's some different opinions out there from our legal scholars whether or not that would affect if the initial petition process was put on the ballot in 2026, how that would affect other things in 2026 that were on the ballot, if those would have to comply with that, or if that would be under the next election in 2028.
Detractors of this proposal have said that if voters end up approving it, it will be basically impossible to approve a new constitutional amendment because just one congressional district could vote it down by like 1 or 2 votes, even if the rest of the state votes it by a landslide. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I think it needs to be harder to put something in the Missouri Constitution. And with the proposal that is set to be put forward in the governor's special session, that's exactly what this does. And so to put something in the Missouri Constitution, it would take an overwhelming support, not by just 5 out of the 8 congressional districts, or not just run up the vote totals in rural Missouri, where our 2 biggest cities, Kansas City and St. Louis, are against it, or vice versa, where Kansas City and St. Louis are definitely for something, and the rest of the state of Missouri is against it. So I think that I fully support the concept of this process about making it harder to put something in the Constitution, and I think making sure that 8 out of 8 congressional districts plus an overall majority of Missourians does exactly that.
So my understanding would be that if this goes to voters, it would only need a majority to pass, right?
Yes, that is true.
Do you understand the irony that you're substantially increasing the bar to pass constitutional amendments, but you're not requiring it to go into effect by that same standard?
Yeah, I know that there is some irony with that, but we are operating, and the legislature is operating under current Missouri state law. And so under current Missouri state law, I think this just highlights some of the problems that we've seen where something can pass with 50% plus 1 vote. And depending on voter turnout, depending on how much out-of-state money is coming in to influence the vote based on some fancy 30-second radio ad or 30-second TV spot, I think that this definitely highlights what's wrong in the system here in the state of Missouri. And so hopefully this will pass. The initial petition revise will pass, and then it will be harder to put something in the Missouri Constitution.
You've mentioned out-of-state money numerous times, and I think that's a reference to Amendment 3, the Abortion Rights Initiative, which did absolutely get a lot of out-of-state money. I noticed there's not a lot of Republicans making that argument about sports betting. Has there been sort of a selective outrage over out-of-state money based on whether the Republicans in particular like or dislike a ballot initiative?
Well, yeah, probably most certainly. Obviously, if it's something that Democrats like, then they want to make sure that it passes, and if it's something that Republicans like, they will make sure that they support it, Republicans support it, and it passes. So there's some selective, I guess, memory as far as when it comes to other issues that have made it in the past. But overall, we're operating in the system that we have right now.
We're talking with Missouri Secretary of State Denny Hoskins about the proposed overhaul of part of Missouri's initiative petition process. So we've spent a lot of time talking about what would be required to pass a constitutional amendment, but I do want to go over the other points that Governor Kehoe laid out when he announced the special session, because there are other things in this proposal that I think are very important. The first that I would like to talk about is a measure that would establish a criminal election offense for fraudulently signing or gathering signatures for a statewide ballot measure. What exactly does that mean, and how would somebody fraudulently sign a petition or fraudulently gather signatures?
Well, it's been documented in the past, and obviously about fraudulent signatures, or someone basically going through the phone book and just signing names because they're paid on a per name basis. And so we want to strengthen that part of the election process and make sure that anybody that cheats as far as trying to put something on the ballot and gather signatures is prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And so I'm very passionate about that part too. That if you're gathering signatures, you need to be actually gathering signatures, not just looking on the internet and signing people's names and then turning those in.
Is that not already illegal, though? I feel like that has to already be illegal under state law.
It is illegal, and from my understanding, and again, I've not seen the final product or the final bill that's going to be filed today, but my understanding is there might be some increased penalties when people do that.
So I just want to be clear, though. If, for say, you signed a petition and you're not registered to vote and you didn't know that you had to be registered to vote in order to sign a petition, that would not constitute signature fraud based off your thought process about this, because that could happen a lot, and I think the best punishment for that is just not to count that signature, not to charge somebody with a crime or anything like that.
I would totally agree. I mean, yes, if you're not registered to vote, or maybe you moved from Illinois to Missouri or Kansas to Missouri and you sign a petition or something like that, no, in my opinion, you should not be charged with a crime because you're not a registered voter of this state.
One other part of this initiative is a ban on foreign nationals from contributing to committees for or against a statewide ballot measure. Isn't it already illegal for someone who doesn't live in the United States to contribute to elections in Missouri?
Actually, it's not. It is as far as elections and election candidates, but different initiative petitions and ballot measures that are on the ballot, it's currently not illegal to do that. And that's why we saw a lot of money from, I believe, a Swiss billionaire come in that was pro Amendment 3, but currently it is not against the law here in the state of Missouri. Yeah,
you're referring to how that aforementioned Swiss billionaire, whose name I do not remember at this moment, there was an article about how he contributed to what's known, I believe, as the 1630 Fund. The problem, though, with actually enforcing this is the 1630 Fund is a 501c4 politically active nonprofit. They don't have to disclose their donors. And I have a long memory of Republicans, even Republicans that did not like then-Governor Eric Greitens, vigorously defending the right of politically active nonprofits to keep their donors secret. So how exactly is this going to be enforced if these nonprofit groups don't have to ever disclose their donors and some foreign national may donate to one of these entities?
Yeah, I'm not saying that it'll be easy to enforce, but I think our Attorney General would have something to say about that, whether it's our current Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, or our new Attorney General here in about a week of Catherine Hanaway. I'm sure that this would be something that goes through their office and they decide whether or not they have enough evidence to prosecute.
The next part of this proposal is that before a statewide ballot measure is certified for signatures to be gathered, there has to be an opportunity for public comment. How long would this public comment period be, or how long would you want it to be? And could someone like you just keep it open indefinitely for initiative petitions that you don't personally like?
Well, that would not be the intent. Is for me to keep it open for initiative petitions that I don't like. But I think a minimum of 30 days and probably a maximum of 90 days.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that people have the opportunity to comment on an initiative petition, and something that does not go through the legislature, there's not a lot of opportunities for public comment in a formal setting. And so most certainly anything that helps with transparency as far as what exactly that initiative petition is going to do, how it's going to affect everyday Missourians, how it's going to affect our lives, how it's going to affect our kids' lives, our grandkids' lives, I fully support. And so I think having a public comment period is vital in order to help Missourians understand how exactly that initiative petition would affect them.
I asked about the time period because I don't want to put on a tinfoil hat, but you were in the Missouri House, and it is very common for the Speaker of the House to send a bill to committee on the last day of session, which means it will never actually see the light of day. And I could just imagine if you had been Secretary of State during the sports betting initiative, you may have just been like, I think this needs like a year and a half of public comment, and it stretch it to like the last day to turn in signatures. I just want to be clear, you are not for something like that.
No, I'm not for something like that, whether it's an issue that I agree with or disagree with that. I think that, like I said, the public comment should probably be a minimum of 30 days and probably a maximum of 90 days. I mean, it does, everybody's got their lives that they're living with, whether that's taking their kids to school and working a job or 2 jobs or 3 jobs. And so it takes a while in order to get the publicity so everybody knows that, hey, there's a public comment period going on, and just the campaign in order to get that done. And so that's why, I think a minimum of 30 days or a maximum of 90 days would probably be, in my opinion, the best bet.
The final part I would like to talk about is a requirement that the full text of a statewide ballot measure be printed and available to voters at all election sites and polling places. Now, I understand not everybody has access to a computer. Some people have thrown their smartphones into the Missouri River because they're too addictive. But couldn't this be a rather wasteful and unnecessary thing when people could just get this information on your beautiful red-colored Secretary of State website?
That's right. Yes, and we most certainly will keep putting it on the Missouri Secretary of State website. But I think, in all truthfulness, that having a copy, and whether that's on a bulletin board or just taped to the wall so people can actually go up and read the full text of any initiative petition, I think that helps with transparency. And so, with the small amount of words that you can actually put on the ballot, having the availability of that full text, I know there's some election nerds like me that probably would go up and read all that.
So when this initiative goes before voters, because I'm not trying to predict the future, but I fully expect this to pass out of the special session, whether it be through a filibuster squashing previous question, or maybe Democrats just realize it's an inevitability and just let it pass. Do you think proponents are going to hone in on the fact that it's going to be significantly harder to amend the Constitution, or are they going to focus on the items we just talked about, which are frankly less controversial and may seem more appealing to voters?
I think they'll probably focus on the whole package. I mean, yes, is it going to be harder to put something in the Missouri Constitution? Yes, it will be. Does it need to be? Most certainly. Missouri has one of the easiest paths to get something in the Missouri Constitution out of any state in the Union. But the other things are reforms that need to happen to help protect election integrity here in the state, to help make sure that anything that passes and the signatures that are gathered, the process that goes into an initiative petition process, that people believe and trust in the process, that, hey, this is what the vast majority of Missourians want, and they believe and trust in that process. So I think it'll be a combination effort of a lot of different things. Obviously, with any ballot measure, there's some hot topic buttons, and there's some things that most people are maybe more passionate about than others.
I Other proposals to make it harder to amend the Constitution have faltered badly in other states like Arkansas and Ohio. Why do you think this would find favor in Missouri, which, as we've kind of discussed in excruciating detail, is a place where voters seem to like left-of-center ballot initiatives?
Well, I think that, obviously there's been a lot of studies and surveys that have happened both for and against a ballot measure like this. And so I trust the process. I trust our legislative leaders. I trust Governor Kehoe as far as the wording and the timing of this special session regarding initial petition reform. And so I think the product that they put together is a good product. Will it be tweaked as it goes through the process? Most certainly.
That was Missouri Secretary of State Denny Hoskins, who spoke with me on Wednesday about a proposal to substantially curtail the initiative petition process.
Today's episode was produced by Jason Rosenbaum, editing by Danny Wistentowski.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.